Welcome back, everyone. We now begin thematic area 4. Happiness and well-being in cross-cultural context. This thematic area examines mental health, resilience, and well-being across cultural contexts, with a focus on Bhutanese youth and educators. It explores the impact of bullying, substance use, and sexual risk behaviors while highlighting cross-cultural learning and compassion-based approaches that support psychological well-being and resilience. Our keynote speaker this morning is Dr. Annie Gowing, who leads the Well-being Specialization in the Masters of Education program at the University of Melbourne. With a background spanning both social work and education, Dr. Annie has worked in school well-being, professional learning, and policy development for over 30 years. Her research examines how student and educator well-being is understood, implemented, and evaluated in educational settings. She has a particular interest in school connectedness, belonging, relational climates, and how concepts of compassion and care manifest in diverse cultural and institutional contexts. This morning, she will speak on well-being, meanings, measures, and messiness. Please welcome Dr. Annie.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, wrong way. Yes, good morning. Honourable Ambassador, distinguished guests, scholars, students, and friends of RUB. It's a great honour to be with you today, presenting at this very important conference. I want to particularly thank the organisers and acknowledge the contributions that so many people have made to bring this event together. So let's take a deep dive into well-being, although it won't be a deep dive, it'll be more like a sort of splash or a paddle, because we only have 12 minutes. But I want to start by an acknowledgement. This is a traditional protocol in meetings in Australia, informal meetings. And while I'm in Bhutan and speaking about well-being, it seems very appropriate to acknowledge that this presentation was prepared on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung peoples of the Kulin Nation, which is where Melbourne, or Naarm, is located. So I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, recognising their enduring connection to and care for country. I also acknowledge that the First Nations people were the original storytellers, teachers, and sharers of knowledge, and their contribution to the Academy has been and continues to be essential in enhancing teaching, research and learning for all. So, I'm starting today with a question, and I want to know how your well-being is, seeing we're talking about well-being. So, a quick think. If your well-being is 8 or above on a scale of 1 to 10, and 10 is excellent and 1 is very low, who would be 8 or above? Okay. Look, I hope you all noted who those people were, because you want to interview you after and find why you are maintaining your well-being at this height. Those of us who are under 8, all of us in the under 8 group, then perhaps we just need more sleep. So, this speaks to the complicated nature of well-being. It's a very democratic concept. We are all experts. We've heard from the most extraordinary scientific brains to date. They are absolutely experts in their field, and I am not claiming that expert label because we are all experts in well-being. We all know where our own well-being sits. We know well-being within our families and our communities. So I speak to an audience of experts. So I'm really just sharing some ideas. So well-being is very personal. It's lived experience and it's immersive. Every moment of the day, something is happening to our well-being. It is ubiquitous. Well-being is everywhere, in case you hadn't noticed. It has exploded in terms of scholarly interest, but also the popular discourse around well-being is very prominent. So it's moved from policy to the commercial sectors, and all of this speaks to multiple stakeholders, multiple voices in this area of well-being. And its popularity, actually, is quite problematic. This is a slide which, it's a word cloud, which I've been doing some teaching at RIGS into the school leader program. And this was a question I posed to the last group, just what is your understanding of well-being? So this is a group of Bhutanese principals and school leaders, and I simply asked, what is well-being? So just have a quick look. I'd like you to note any words there that resonate with how you understand well-being. Anything you think may be missing. Okay. I want you to hold on to that thought as I share this slide. This is a study by Solis and colleagues, and they examined understandings of well-being across multiple cultural contexts. And they used the 8 domains, which should have come up, but they're hidden. Sorry. They used 8 domains. I'm not sure why they're not appearing, but anyway, there were 8 domains: relationships, social participation, activities and daily living, physical health, psychological health, spirituality, economic security and education. And what they found out of this study, that it didn't matter what cultural group, what location, that 3 of those domains had great universality, that people understood their well-being wherever they were through the lens of relationships, physical health and psychological health. And then there was variation among the others. The variation you can see here. So things like being treated with dignity and respect and concepts of civic engagement were much more important to communities in lower income and African and Middle Eastern countries. Connection to culture was a key area of well-being for many Indigenous communities. And so on. You can see that there's differences. The bottom one there is around recreation and leisure, significantly less likely to be raised in lower income countries and much more highly prized in more developed Western countries. You can draw your own conclusions from that. So these are some of the core elements. As someone who's worked in well-being all their life, these are some of the core elements that research and my own experiences have brought to the fore. So it's fundamentally relational. It's not something we own. It emerges through quality relationships. It's definitely shaped by the social context in which we situated and the structures within which we live and work. It requires justice, equity, recognition. A person cannot be well within an unjust system. It's volatile our well-being will fluctuate throughout today, and it certainly will fluctuate throughout the week and the month. And it's a human right. And we could have a sort of think tank right now, and we could add 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 more core elements. And that's what I invite you all to do, to start thinking about how you conceptualise well-being within the Bhutanese context. So I just want to quickly locate the concept. Of course, we have all heard of the UN Sustainable Goals, and if we look at these goals, we will see that they are interthreaded. You work on one, you work on poverty, you get a well-being outcome. But you look at the 17 of them, working in any of those is interthreading and doing well-being work in some way. Of course, we cannot talk about well-being and happiness without absolutely honouring and recognising the contribution of your country's GNH. It's been groundbreaking and continues to influence how people in countries around the world think about what matters in terms of their populations. We also have this emerging and developing concept of the well-being economy. And what is that? It's really economies that are about serving the interests of people and the planet, and not the other way around. And so moving away from this intense focus on economic growth at any cost. And we do have a number of well-being, it's taking its time. Something's happening. We have lost the slides as well. The bell has gone, the slides have gone. It's a mini crisis, but I'll keep going. We have a number of well-being economies around the world, so that's an emerging concept. Aha, here we go. Australia has a Measuring What Matters framework. So you can see that these ideas are building in policy around the world. Of course, we come back to Bhutan, and the point that's interesting at the bottom there is that Bhutan is the only country that produces a composite well-being score. That enables you to do very granular work, really attend to where attention needs to be given. My slides are being very non-compliant. What I want to say is, though, we know what we mean by well-being, but can I say that it is still very contested, that there are what's happening? Right. It's a very contested concept. This was from Australia. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what's happening with my slides, but they are not behaving, and I'm running out of time. So I'm just going to say that it is a very contested concept. In Australia, before the current government was elected, the Chalmers, who is now our treasurer, put forward that if they were elected, they'd bring in a well-being budget. And you can see that the then current treasurer absolutely slammed the idea. What I'm saying is that we might be all signed up to the idea of well-being, but it is not universally seen as a goal. And in education, this is particularly so. There are communities and parents and ways of thinking that say well-being is not the role of schools. It's education. Of course it is. But it also, it bespeaks the complexity of the work that we do when we work in this area. Well-being is everywhere, however you can see. It still is an outsider in terms of some of the big well-being questions in the world, like climate change. And you can see from these studies that in terms of how it is centred, as a concept that needs to be considered, we still have quite some way to go. It's been taken up in far and wide, as you can see, from the global policy documents down to wellness apps and programs. And this speaks again to its ubiquity. And that is, as I said earlier, a problem. One of the problems is that we now have this concept called wellness washing, where big corporations and organisations, and can I say universities, take up the idea of well-being and give the impression that they're attending to well-being, but in fact they're saying it's really your responsibility. So things like workload or environment are not attended to, but we'll give you a mindfulness app and you work on that. So this is highly problematic, and it has moved into the area of, it's been corporatised, the concept of well-being, in a very unhelpful way. And what's the problem with this? Again, it locates the focus on the individual rather than looking at what is happening at a systemic level. How is well-being measured? You'd be very familiar, I'm sure, a lot of you, with those kinds of approaches. What do they miss? They miss all these things. They miss justice and fairness, belonging and connection, which is my area of research, meaning and purpose, quality of relationships. They don't capture those. The elephant in the room is that what are we doing? The world is in what is sometimes referred to as a polycrisis. We have a polycrisis is when one crisis happens and then other things follow it. An example here is the bushfires in Australia in 1920, and that came very shortly before the COVID outbreak. So we had environmental devastation, loss of houses, people were homeless, an economic and health crisis, and suddenly the ecosystem of the communities in which the fires occurred, but far beyond that, were severely impacted. So where does well-being sit in the ongoing polycrises that the world is currently experiencing? I am finishing up. So the problem with well-being is it's too fragmented and contested to really drive meaningful action. And relationality and interdependence and connectedness, I believe, offer much clearer frameworks for action. This is where our energy should be. However, connection pathways are not equitably distributed, and so this is another challenge. And we need to get beyond these weird understandings. You know, a lot of well-being research is heavily centred, is psychological research, which is heavily westernised, and it misses a lot. We need to move beyond that. And I come to the point at the bottom here that relational thinking is really a key part of moving forward, especially towards sustainability. And we must work in transdisciplinary ways. The silos do not work. These are just some of the disciplines that contribute to our understandings of well-being. We won't do this alone. Psychology might have done the heavy lifting in the past, but it's not going to suffice. We've heard from economists, scientists, medical specialists, all of these people, all of you are part of the well-being solutions. And so it's what I call the relational turn. It's moving away from this exceptionalism or exemptionalism that has dominated, that we live in harmony and connection with our world, and that we must embrace multiple ways of understanding. My kind of mantra is always we have to listen more than we talk, and I'm not really demonstrating that at the moment. But I think that unless we work in much more epistemically just ways, unless we listen to other people's knowledges and ways of understanding the world, we will never really progress. And so reimagining wellbeing work is all about working together, bringing the creativity and innovation which we've heard from every speaker to date, harnessing that energy, working together, valuing different knowledges, bringing all of those points of view to the table. And just to finish up, relationality and collaborations, which is what this conference is doing. But at the University of Melbourne signed an MOU with the 2 colleges of education in RUB. This is a starting point for collaborations, and I know that RUB has connections with universities worldwide, but it's not just universities, it's organisations, it's partnering with NGOs, it's partnering with community agencies, it's listening to all those voices and bringing a shared vision of social good, the interconnectedness, the interdependence of how we need to live in this precious and fragile world. So relationality at work, reciprocal learning, building knowledges together, honouring the context and really bringing cultural humility to all we do. So thank you very much, and I'm sorry my slides were a little nightmarish, but we got there in the end. Thank you. I'll just... Right. Thank you. I'll give you this.
Thank you, Dr. Annie. As you open up the dialogue on what well-being can mean and how that can be translated into practice and policy, because as Dr. Annie highlighted, a person cannot be well within an unjust system. Our next presenter is Professor Kazang Sharap, Dean of Academic Affairs at Royal Thimphu College. With more than 30 years of experience in teaching, research, and academic leadership, he has shaped teacher education, youth well-being research, and education policy in Bhutan. His work spans student engagement, GNH education, and psychosocial well-being, and he has led national as well as international consultancies for UNESCO, UNICEF, and the Royal Education Council. His topic today is All is Not Well, Psychosocial Challenges Facing Bhutan's Youth in Higher Education. Please welcome Dr. Kazang.
Good morning, everyone. Let's continue to discuss on the well-being topic that was introduced by our keynote. To do this, I would like to invite everyone to, as I run through my slides, I would like to invite everyone to reflect on some of your practices. And I'm sure everyone in this hall, in one way or the other, it will be relevant, in terms of, so it's basically, I'm looking at the current landscape of mental health amongst youth in Bhutan. So in order to understand the current mental health situation of the youth, we need to understand some of the psychosocial profile of this group, this cohort of youth, which is basically, I'm referring to anywhere from 17, 18 years to 20, 25, 26 years. If you look at literature, this group is often being referred to as digital natives. They grew up with smartphones, social media. They prefer online platforms, like TikTok, YouTube, all this. And they expect, no matter whether it is in education whether it is in the family or whether it is in their daily life, they expect seamless integration of technology. This group of people are often referred to as socially conscious. They are more pragmatic and entrepreneurial in mindset. They prefer freelancing. They prefer gig work for more freedom and independence. And if you look at the education, I think they're more into, they're more educated now compared to, during our times. And they prefer hybrid models, self-paced learning, and also personalized pathways. And these are just some few important ones that I just wanted to, in the interest of time, wanted to, just highlight here. There are many others, in fact. And because of all this surrounding environment, they are highly vulnerable to anxiety, to depression, to social comparison. And it is pity that they're in a very difficult situation. They have to navigate between these global influences and the cultural expectations. Highly vulnerable. And if you really analyze it, look it in depth, all these actually challenge the very foundations of GNH. Bhutan is being looked after by many from elsewhere around the world as a GNH country. Everybody is happy here. Everybody is doing well. Oh, you are from a GNH country. But we need to understand the realities as a Bhutanese. So in order to understand that, we have conducted 2 national surveys of college youth in Bhutan. The first one was done in 2016, and the second one was done in 2023, which involved about 4,500 college students throughout the nation. And I would like to share some of the findings from this, comparative findings from these 2 big surveys. As you all know, in Bhutan, there is a rising, the health risk behaviors are on the rise, the substance abuse, sexual risk behaviors, the mental health issues, even bullying and discrimination is happening in our context. And if you look at this, all these have negative associations, actually. It leads to, whether it is in education or whether it is in health, this has negative association. And in fact, our health ministry has already declared mental health as the 6th killer disease in Bhutan. And this is something very serious for us, as educators, as parents, as policymakers, as administrators. Literature talks about how resilience and optimism are important protective factors. We need to take care of this in the context of mental health. So we will look at some of these findings. And there's also a call for collective action. We need to work together. Yesterday, whole day, we discussed, we accepted, in fact, about how we, tend to work in silos. We never tend to collaborate. We tend to, take care of our own surrounding, our own boundaries. We never work in collaboration. It was accepted yesterday, and I agree that. And this dialogue is not a new dialogue. This has been there ever since I started my teaching career in 1994, and there has been no improvement. And luckily, under the visionary leadership of the Gelsin, we have now the PEMA Secretariat who is doing some work in terms of addressing some of these issues. But PEMA Secretariat alone cannot, address this. I think as educational institutions, we need to step up. We need to work in collaboration. The objective of this study was to basically look at the psychological health patterns, to examine that, and then see if there's any change between 2016 and 2023, and then finally to identify some policy and practice implications. So in terms of methodology, I already explained it was a national level survey involving college students. Almost all the colleges were involved. And in 2016, we had close to 2,500 participants who responded to the survey, and 2023, slightly over 2,000 participants. So these are some of the measures that we use, psychological health indicators like mental health, substance use, sexual risk behavior scale, bullying and discrimination scales. And for the 2023, considering the latest development and importance, we added a few more scales, like scale on optimism, measuring the optimism, how optimistic our youths are, and how resilient they are, and also their future orientation, given the current, the issue that we face, the diaspora, the youths living outside. Okay, so let's get into the findings. In terms of bullying, in 2016, we found out that 40.1% of the college youths have been bullied at one time or the other. And in 2023, in terms of percentage, you see some decrease, but if you did some statistical analysis, it was a non-significant decrease. So that means not much change has happened. So common forms of, bullying the nature, telling lies, excluding someone, your friend, disliking others. These are some of the common forms of bullying. And bullying others, in 2016, there were about 18.1% of the college students who bullied others. And 2023, 10%. And statistical analysis showed that there has been some significant reduction, but I'm not sure why, how it happened. A total of 19.1 of those bullied also reported bullying others. This is interesting actually. In terms of discrimination, again, very high, 46% of these youths were discriminated, and of course, there has been some reduction, which is a good thing. Okay, so again, coming back to these associations, bullying linked to, people who are bullied, they are more prone to, going for substance abuse, suicidality rates high, they often get distress. So there's a positive, so we really need to think of that. And then also associated to lower resilience, and then, high migration aspirations. So again, in terms of sexual risk behaviors, quite high, low condom use. In terms of mental health symptoms, 10 to 19% reported, again, quite significant, much higher than in 2016. Suicidal ideation, 16.6%. Again, for a small population like ours, it's quite, in terms of 5.4% attempt, suicidal attempt. And then if you look at the differences between female and males, females are more prone to this. Okay, so to continue with resilience, and only 45% of the college youth actually consider themselves resilient, which means 55% are not resilient. 40.6% very optimistic, again, below 50%. Future orientation, 36% in Bhutan, and 53.6% hybrid. They are either here or there. So again, high level of alcohol, tobacco, all this substance use. Condom use generally low. Based on some of these findings, there is a need for reimagining the mental health systems from being reactive to more proactive, and making it more inclusive and integrated. Youth wants them to be, a part of that. they don't want, someone to make a policy or decide for them, actually. So we need to come up with youth-friendly services and stronger institutional accountability. I'm not sure how many of our colleges actually take care of this. I know as an academic myself, we are so much into academic affairs, activities, and then we often neglect some of this. So youth agency and mental health leadership, definitely, more empowerment, youth empowerment. And WHO has come up with a whole school approach to bullying and health promoting schools. I thought we could, why not as a college, we could also go for health promoting colleges, which is very much underpinned by some of the values related to GNH. Okay, so we definitely need to integrate well-being. We cannot just forget it. We need to make it part of our policy, part of our pedagogy in the colleges, part of the college campus culture, in fact. At RTC, we have started a student success project based on the 4 immeasurable qualities of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Having successfully, tried out this at Paro College of Education, we thought that this can really make an impact in our students, which is value-based and very much, so it helps in nurturing emotional intelligence, building resilience in our college youth, and ethical engagement, and also inculcating the sense of belonging in the youth. So these are some of the implications. There has to be definitely policy reform. Our youth policy was, I believe, ever since 2011, there has been no revision in terms of youth policy. We need to definitely promote that. Institutional interventions, I think if we just keep on focusing too much on academics and neglect some of these important things, we might, the consequences can be quite detrimental. I think we need to really we need to promote mental health infrastructure, bullying prevention and accountability. I have heard informally that some of our colleges, in fact, encourage bullying, to control students, but we never know how detrimental this can be in the long run. This is something that, and again, youth agency, empowering youth in terms of all this is very important. And also yesterday we discussed about how even the technical college students have low awareness of cybersecurity. So we need to definitely do some, instead of teaching all outdated curriculum in our colleges, why not something relevant like digital literacy and all, migration aspirations. So that is it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Kazam, for covering this very pertinent topic that I'm sure a lot of young adults here can relate to, and highlighting the need to reimagine our mental health systems now. Our next speaker is Tsiring Doji, a physics teacher with more than 11 years of teaching experience. He's a recipient of the MEXT Teacher Training Program Scholarship from Kagawa University, Japan. Tsiring has published extensively in both national and international journals, and his research focuses on curriculum and instructional studies, educational assessment, and evidence-based practices in science education. He will present on Random Forest Analysis Reveals Bullying and Sexual Abuse as Key Factors Contributing to Suicidal Ideation Among Bhutanese Students. Please welcome Tsiring.
Good morning to all. As mentioned by our MC, my name is Tsiring Doji and I am from Shari Higher Secondary School, and I am currently teaching physics at Shari Higher Secondary School. Now, there is a quote that I deeply value. In God we trust, others must bring data. So, whatever I am going to present here is or will be purely based on data that I have collected through my research lab. At the same time, you must be also wondering why a physics teacher is presenting on adverse childhood experiences and societal ideation rather than doing a presentation on science education or something related to my own field. As we go further through the slides, you will understand why I am doing or I did a research on this. This research is co-authored by Mr. Pelden Nima from Wang Bama Central School and Mrs. Tashidem from Shari Higher Secondary School. This is the introduction of my study. Adverse childhood experiences refers to stressful or traumatic events that children experiences during their childhood between 0 to 18 years old. And WHO has classified or categorized it into 13 categories, which includes abuse like sexual abuse, physical abuse, neglect, emotional abuse, then community violence, children living with incarcerated family members, children living with household members who are abusing alcohol and substance, and those who are also undergoing like peer violence. It gained prominence with the most influential study conducted by CDC and Kaiser Permanente in US by Dr. Vincent J. Falitti and his colleagues in 1998. And after his seminal study, many papers has been produced which demonstrated the relationship between dose response like ACE accumulative scores and adult morbidity and mortality. Now, this slide shows that ACEs are prevalent everywhere. Globally, it is prevalent. Two meta-analysis, recent meta-analysis shows that ACEs are prevalent both in adults as well as children between 0 to 18 years. And disconcertingly, Bhutan is also not immune to the presence of ACEs. For example, a study by Doji et al. And study by Doji and his colleagues in 2020 found that adults aged 60 to 61 had experienced at least one form of ACEs in their childhood. Among the youths or among children, NCWC and UNICEF in 2016 found that 6 out of 10 children aged 13 to 17 had experienced physical violence, while 1 in 8 experienced sexual violence. A secondary analysis by Doji et al. In 2025, recently, that is based on the secondary analysis of global school-based health survey conducted in Bhutan, found that 60.7% of the 5,808 grade 11 to 12 students had experienced at least one form of violence, such as being involved in physical fight, physically attacked, bullied, and sexual violence. And among this, 57.7 had experienced more than one form. Now, let me talk about the negative consequences or negative impacts of ACEs, and I'm going to relate it to societal ideation. Among the most concerning negative outcomes of ACEs is their association with societal ideation. Societal ideation, as defined here, is thoughts about engaging in behavior intended to end one's life, and it is considered to be critical public health globally. Many studies have found link between adverse childhood experiences and suicidal ideation. For example, Thompson and his team found that individuals who had experienced physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, parental incarceration, and living with family which had a history of suicidality or alcoholism face increased odds of suicidal ideation and suicide behaviors in adulthood. Now, this studies also shows that ACEs are related, or ACEs is linked with or linked to suicidal ideation and suicidal thoughts. So like dose response relationship is shown here. For example, like Chow et al. Has found a threefold higher risk of suicidal ideation among girls living in divorced or separated or reconstructed or single parent household compared to those in intact households. Then being bullied is also identified as the significant predictor of suicidal ideation. For example, Biden and Thadio found that adolescents who have experienced both school bullying and cyberbullying victimization had 3.6 times higher odds of experiencing suicidal ideation. So this global studies shows or underscores that there is a need for identifying the prevalences of ACEs and key ACEs predicting suicidal ideation in the country or schools to implement effective intervention or intervention strategies. Now, not only global studies, studies conducted in Bhutan also shows that suicidal ideation is prevalent in Bhutan. For example, 11.6% of adolescents surveyed reported suicidal ideation, and the major risk factors identified included physical attack, physical fights, sexual violence, and bullying. And amongst them, physical attack and bullying were found to be the most significant and contributing ACEs for suicidal ideation. Gender differences were also found. Female adolescents reported more suicidal ideation than males. Now, these are the research gaps I have identified. The existing studies on ACEs and suicidal ideation are all international studies, and there is only limited studies conducted in Bhutan. And the studies conducted in Bhutan are based on secondary analysis of data, like based on global school health based student survey. And other one is most of the studies have used short form of adverse childhood experiences scales to measure ACEs. I found that this WHO's adverse childhood experience international questionnaire, which classifies ACEs into 13 categories, has not been used much. Methodologically, extant studies have predominantly conducted bivariate analysis, and random forest analysis has not been done, especially variable selection through random forest. In short, B served. This is research question. Now, significance of the study. My title itself reveals that bullying and sexual abuse are the key predictors of suicidal ideation in Bhutan. Now, why I am doing presentation on this is this one, third one, validate the need for trauma-responsive educational practices focusing on bullying and sexual abuse in Bhutanese schools. So trauma-responsive educational practices is necessary these days. As a teacher, we come across many students coming into class carrying loads of emotion and mental well-being problems in the class. So these are the methodologies. I conducted cross-sectional survey study, and I use stratified simple random sampling. I use ACE IQ questionnaire. Then to address socialization, I use single item question with yes or no response option. Then I conducted random forest and bsurf using our software. And I split it data into 25 and 75. 75 training data and 25 training sets, testing sets. These are the demographic characteristics of my respondents. 751 children responded to my survey. Out of it, 321 were male and 430 were female. 36 male responded yes to socialization and 47 yes to socialization by female. These are the exposure of ACEs to, for the students. This shows that our children are experiencing multiple ACEs, with largest being students with 2 ACEs and followed by 1. And 6% of them say that they did not experience any adverse childhood experiences, meaning that 94% of them have experienced at least one form of adverse childhood experiences in their life. Now, this is the variable importance plot of random forest. Random forest shows bullying, physical neglect, and staying with members undergoing, like using substance as the main predictor. Then I conducted bsurf to further refine it, and it put forward bullying and sexual abuse as the main predictor of suicidal ideation. And I checked it to quantify whether these 2 predictors really impact bullying, suicidal ideation. I conducted multiple logistic regression, and it identified bullying as the strongest predictor, followed by sexual abuse. Then I validated this model by conducting multiple logistic regression on 25 testing data set kept aside, and it produced 70% accuracy and 63.5% precision. Now, this shows that bullying is not just a one-time event. It leads to lots of traumatic psychological trauma. It leads to anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, isolation, sadness, and shame, and this emotional effects increases the risk of self-harm, suicidal ideation, and suicidal attempts in adolescence. Sexual abuse also leads to shame, guilt, self-blame, hopelessness, low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, and PTSD. And survivors often face suicidal stigma, fear of judgment, suicidal withdrawal, and attachment insecurities. These are also some negative impacts. The one, for some, suicidal becomes a tragic means of escape from persistent suffering. So this is one of the findings reflected in other studies. Now, these are some practical recommendations, as like our Sharaf sir have already asserted. These are some practical suggestions suggested by other practitioners and papers elsewhere. So if you could practice this in our school, then trauma-responsive educational practices can be effectively ensured in our school. So this is all about my study. Thank you. Thank you for taking lots of time.
Thus, thank you, Satsering, for covering another very pertinent topic about a very important but vulnerable section of our society, that is our children. Our next presenter is Associate Professor Vicky Banham, a leader, educator, and qualitative researcher with 25 years of experience in teaching and research. She specializes in translating knowledge into practice and developing effective pedagogies. Dr. Vicky has been recognized with the Vice Chancellor's Award for Teaching and Learning and the Australian Award for University Teaching for her outstanding contribution to student learning. Her presentation is titled Exploring Knowledge Exchange in a Cultural Immersion Program, a preliminary study. Please.
Thank you. His Excellency, distinguished guests and scholars, and those impending and upcoming scholars sitting around the back rows up there. Welcome. I first would like to acknowledge my co-conspirators on this that have worked with me, so this is not, oh, thank you. This is a joint collaborative piece of work, so Associate Professor Sonam Rinchen and Assistant Professor Kinley and Rosa Napoleana Lincoln, who was a PhD student, but also a colleague of mine at ECU. So I need to acknowledge them. Get the right one. Okay, the background. The background of this particular report it's built over a period of time. We initially started study tours to Samsey College of Education in 2019. And what we just sort of discovering in those processes thereafter was something was happening in the way that the students were connecting between both the visitor and the buddy. And we really wanted to know what that was. So this research is based on not what researchers talk about, but it's based on the voice of the students themselves. So this whole piece of work is about what the students are saying, not what we're saying. Somewhatly different, I guess. And it's really built into something like planting a seed and then building it. And the idea is to understand if the way that one interacts with other cultures can assist you in building a sense of yourself, your confidence level. And the primary aim, of course, is being a graduate for the new world, a graduate that's able to assist their own countries to create the change that's needed. The research objectives were basically two. One was to deconstruct how events like study tours can operationalize the abstract G&H values and principles in student learning. And the other one was really to explore how knowledge exchange, and this is what we're talking about, students exchanging knowledge amongst themselves, how it can be enhanced throughout that particular experience. So it was sort of like two broad research objectives, but they were based upon the student voice. The significance of the study was really about, because it's only a prelim, we're beginning this, was to contribute to further research, because there's very little research done on what the students are saying. Lots of research around study tours and the importance of them, the value of them in assisting students grow and develop. But there's very little done about the students telling us what they're learning, the students telling us how they're transforming their knowledge. So, and the other one was really about looking at the curriculum itself, because this is part of the curriculum, how we can embed those particular skills in order to, in line with the G&H principles, in order to ensure that students graduate that are confident, that are happy to look at challenges, go outside the book, the textbook, and look at the real world, because it's the real world is where they're going when they graduate. And so there were some challenges that brought about that significance. The challenge is that often there is a lack of clear curriculum guidelines of how this might happen. The focus sometimes can be on textbook learning. There may be limited professional capacity across the educators, and often there's difficulties in translating the broad values of G&H into the subject-specific pedagogy. The theoretical frameworks of this piece of work were embedded in constructivism. What we want to try and do was we want to try and focus on the experience, the lived experience at the time of the students, and see if there is a way in which that lived experience, or through that lived experience, they could internalize the knowledge that they have in order to feel comfortable and to build their own resilience and confidence. The study itself was informed by the experimental learning model of Colby and Colby, whose suggests that the activities of study tours encourages students to interact with subject material that is outside of the classroom or place of study. They experience new cultural interactions and they move away from the passive learning that of hearing and seeing. They move to more the active learning, and that was the concept we were trying to understand about what the students' interactions were going. They were moving into this active learning by doing and engaging in real world issues. And they undertook that by having to have discussions and debates with their own colleagues, students at the same levels, who were questioning them all the time about what were you saying, why are you saying that? And that student-to-student interaction happens outside of the classroom. Inside the classroom, of course, in maybe discussions, but it actually happens outside in much more informal ways. And so we were trying to understand or look at how the process whereby knowledge is created through the transformation of the experience that those students were experiencing together. There was a number of gaps that we were looking at, and I think these are some of the gaps that we've seen throughout the course of yesterday and this morning. But one of the gaps particularly was how values such as empathy, community vitality, and environmental responsibility are assessed and reinforced through concrete classroom tasks. Because some of those skills often cannot be learned just by focusing on doing my assessments, doing my examinations, doing my reading of my textbook. They aren't there, and if our focus is strongly in that direction, then where is all this other things happening that Dr. Annie was talking about? About how I begin to understand myself, because I am going as a student, I'm going out into the workforce, I am going to have to be part of this whole new world that's beginning, and it's an interesting world that we're in, a whole new world, but how can I do that if I don't feel confident and understanding of myself? And I get that when I am challenged. What we did was a simple methodology, which is a pervasive sampling, so it was a group of students that we had, but we did 3 different touch points of connecting with them. And those touch points happened before, at the commencement of the study tour, to give them, the students, voices about their concepts of understanding, at the conclusion, and then a post at the end, what had they learned from that interaction of the study tour. And also we had focus groups of each of the groups as well. So the whole emphasis was listening to their particular voice in our method. So it was a very qualitative piece of work. It wasn't quantitative, because our focus was trying to hear their voices. Okay, the findings were analysed using thematic analysis by Bourne and Clark. But more importantly, the themes that arose from the student data, that's the students' voices, were 5. One was the intangible skills, and this was really interesting because the intangible skills were talking about their own personal growth, what they had learned from listening to their fellow students from another cultural group, their own self-awareness. Some of them increased communication skills because they needed to talk to the incoming student. So they need to express themselves, and similarly, the Australian students need to express themselves a bit better as well. So those interesting language things were happening. The communication skills. So the intangible skills was probably the greatest outcome. The intellectual growth, and that was more around critical thinking. Critical thinking is a critical skill when you're going into the workforce. How can you assist in the transformation of society if you don't have critical thinking? To challenge the status quo and move on. How can you do that if you don't have that skill? The intercultural learning, and the intercultural learning was really quite interesting because what students were saying was, I know about my culture, but because you have challenged me, I'm thinking a bit differently now. Or I didn't realise I understood that about my culture, but now you've challenged me. I think I'm going to change my views here. So it was a really interesting introspective look that the students were undertaking because they were being challenged. Thank you. Learning beyond the classroom was another one, and that was pushing the boundaries. The students pushed each other's, and you could see it happening. They were pushing each other's and questioning to get that final bit. Can I ask that about you? Can I push this idea more about you, or don't you want to talk about it? So it was really good, and that's really good learning when you enter into the workforce. But the importance of the buddy, that's the relationship that was happening between these two groups of students from different cultural groups supporting each other. Incredible outcomes of that. And that's just a photo of them just sitting around having a good time. But that interaction that photos are critical because this is where the learning was happening, in this environment. It wasn't inside the classroom. Okay. Briefly, interpretation of results. Well, what we discovered is that what was happening is that all of the data that we received was suggesting to us that we need to look at a new, additional way in the learning process. And that additional way of including in the learning process was into mainly focusing on the transformational learning and holistic education. That the classroom is brilliant. We do have to learn. The curriculum has to be taught. We all know that. We have outcomes to meet. But there's something else that we must include as well. And that is that building the confidence level, the ability of the student to feel that they can contribute in a very positive way. So when they become graduates, they take on that leadership role that all countries need. And the questions that we had that arose from this, we're not going to answer them, but we just put them there anyway. It was about the curriculum is very crowded. All of us teaching anywhere, we know there's so much to learn, and the students up the back there will know they're being rushed. So how can we do this? Sorry. So conclusions, basically, mainly that we know that study tours, there's the theory and the research in study tours, we know that that enhances learning, but we don't necessarily know how the students are taking this and taking this learning on, and that's what we need to fully understand. So, but also we know that what we saw from the students is that if we can give them that opportunity to be questioned by their fellow students from other cultures, that may enhance their ability to feel more comfortable about who they are and where they might like to go. And future research, this is one that I basically want to throw out to all the colleges sitting around here, is that this is a very small project, but we know that all the colleges and institutes have visitors coming from overseas at some time, and we would very much like it if you would be interested in coming on board so we could duplicate or replicate the methodology to build up a bigger data set about listening to the voices of both the students coming in and the students that are here. So if you're interested, very much like to work with you we can give you all the information you need, you just got to implement it for us, that would be great. There are limitations because it is a small study, but it can be a big study, and we hope that by starting these questionings around working with students and listening to their voice, then we might have a better understanding about how we can prepare the students for the workforce that they're about to enter. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vicky, for your interesting presentation on how study tours and knowledge exchange can enhance our students' various competencies as well as skills. Our final presenter for this session is Dr. Jambel Hamo, who teaches primary science education at Paro College of Education. Dr. Jambel's work focuses on compassionate and mindfulness-based pedagogy, integrating emotional awareness with scientific inquiry. She's passionate about fostering curiosity, empathy, and mindful engagement in science classrooms to support the holistic learning and well-being of both students and teachers. She will present on Compassion in Practice, Perspectives of Bhutanese Primary Science Teachers. Dr. Jambe.
Zangpala to everyone. It's an honor for me to present a part of my PhD thesis under the title Compassion in Practice. Thank you. Compassion in Practice, Perspective of Bhutanese Primary Science Teachers. I'd like to acknowledge my two supervisors, Dr. Nadia Risk and Judith Miller, and I have them in my thoughts as I proceed with my presentation. I'll be sharing how Bhutanese primary science teachers define and practice compassion in their science classroom. So I'd like to begin by briefly highlighting the broader context that frames my study. Globally, there is a growing focus on creating classrooms that are caring, safe, compassionate, and inclusive. A kind of space that actively supports students' overall well-being. And in Bhutan, this global focus strongly resonates with our educational foundations. Our system is deeply rooted in Buddhist philosophy, and the principles of gross national happiness encourage kindness, interdependence, interconnectivity, and responsibility for others. And most importantly, the Educating for Gross National Happiness aims at holistic development, not only the academic achievement, but also social and emotional competence of the students and learners. Despite this strong educational foundation, there still remains a gap in understanding how teachers bring compassion alive into their classroom. So not much of empirical research has been done on this. So that motivated me to do a study on this. So my research objectives are, I have two main. The first is, I'm just looking at the strategies that teachers are practicing compassion in the classroom. And secondly, how these compassionate practices inform teacher education and educational goal in Bhutan. So the significance of the study is at 4 levels. The first one is at the student level. It just highlights how compassionate teaching brings overall well-being of the students in the classroom. The second one is at the classroom level. It looks at guiding teachers to develop a nurturing space for the students' well-being and learning. And at the national level, it informs teachers' education and educational policy in Bhutan. And at the global level, it contributes to international discussion on education policy, on education practices, and compassionate practices by sharing Bhutan's unique perspectives and experiences. Now I have a small part of my literature that focus on compassion and especially in education. So from the Buddhist perspective, compassion is noticing, being very aware of somebody's thing, of others' suffering, and acting genuinely, mindfully to elevate that suffering. So in this context, the suffering is unpleasant, subjective, emotional pains, including psychological distress, psychological anxiety, fear, and all those things, very unpleasant. And from the Western perspective, compassion is defined as self-compassion and recognizing shared humanity and mindfulness. So it takes care of the outward and inward care. And in education, compassion is all about bringing actions to support students' well-being. And It also talks about the developing a positive relationship between teachers and students based on trust. And in science education, it highlights ethical foundation of learning, whereby scientific knowledge is used thoughtfully and in a way like a person can make an ethical and moral decision. So there is a positive of research being done on compassion and how Buddhist science teachers are actually bringing them into the classroom, and that was my research gap. And now this is the outline of my research methodology. I used the pragmatist paradigm where I was allowed to use both the quantitative and the qualitative methods to understand compassion comprehensively. And I also, the overall research design was mixed method explanatory sequential design, whereby I did the quantitative phase first, followed by the qualitative phase. And on the quantitative side, I did collect data using survey with 201 Buddhist primary science teachers using Likert scale. And then these teachers are across Bhutan. And I did looked at the construct validity of my instrument using rash analysis, and it came out quite good. It was excellent. And then I also used the descriptive statistics to analyze by quantitative data. And to have a deeper understanding of the quantitative data, I employed in-depth semi-structured interview with 10 teachers, and data analysis was done using thematic analysis. So this is my survey findings. Figure shows how teachers enact compassion across several key behaviors. Overall, the findings show that teachers' agreement on practicing these behaviors in the classroom is almost more than 85, some of them things says even 100%. And then it indicates that more than 4/5 of the teachers are practicing this behavior consistently in their classrooms. And the thematic analysis of my interview, interviews showed 6 key strategies, and they corroborated my quantitative findings. So these 6 key strategies are role modeling compassion in the classroom so that teachers are, students are able to emulate. So they are being exemplars of showing compassion. Then second is self-compassion was very important for them. There were instances where they were getting burnt out, but then taking self-care was found very necessary. So they were actually practicing self-compassion. So they said like in return, they were able to show compassion to their students. And then they also talked about compassionate speech, using kind words, very respectful language. And then compassionate listening. Some of the teachers said that students came up with so many problems, and then only through deep listening, they were able to solve some of the problems that would have been, that would have been left unnoticed. And then one key finding that I really liked was they gave importance in understanding students' life stories because they were very empathetic to students, and as a result, students were supported and they were connected because they were able to do that, attunement, that emotional attunement with the students. And then lastly, very simple, but it brought a lot of good things in the classroom, creating classroom rules based on respect and care, and that was co-creation, giving students the ownership, giving students the power, like empowering students to develop rules, and students felt good about that, and then that was related to positive behaviors in the classroom. And now I have the discussion of my findings. So it's very simple, like teachers were role modeling compassion, and then teachers were practicing self-compassion and compassionate speech, compassionate listening. It's a co-creation of rules and knowing students' stories. And these are the practical implications. They are same like the findings. And then the six key strategies. See, there were so many, but I just used these 6 key strategies. And then these are the 6 ones. So what happened here is, so these 6 key strategies, they are not only compassionate practices, but it indicates that they are deeply embedded into our DNA, like in our culture, and that is our cultural identity. And we are happy to say that. But what happens as the rapid societal changes, modernization, westernization? So then what happens is there is a risk that these compassionate practices might be sidelined, might erode. So it is the sacred duty of every individual to protect, promote, and preserve, and make it very visible, make it very intentional, and sustain these practices by integrating into the curriculum. So what I have next is, based on this, I have recommendations like including compassion practice explicitly into the teacher education program so that teachers are trained to become compassionate from the beginning of their training. And then I have, for the in-service teachers, they will have to sustain, and then they will have to strengthen their compassionate practices. So a kind of, professional development programs would be very good for them, because what happened is, the earlier, presenters talked about the shift coming. And then it's about the school leadership. Uh, School leaderships play a very important role in developing a compassionate space for teachers to practice their compassion. And then at the policy level, integrating compassion very explicitly into the curriculum, making it very visible, making it very intentional. I'm repeating this, and making it very, supportive, so that students at all levels, so that the students, when they graduate, they will be practicing compassion from the start of their schooling. So it should be across all levels. And now future research direction. I have some limitations in my research because it was done during the COVID. It is a little biased because it's all about the teachers' perspectives. So I was not able to come to Bhutan because of the international restriction. So I couldn't do the observation. I couldn't listen to the voices of this students to validate. And then so classroom observation would have been good. And then another one is across all subjects, not only science. And then longitudinal studies on students long-term would be very good. And then even the impact of compassionate practice on teachers' well-being. So these are my references. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Jambe, for highlighting the importance of embedding compassionate practices in our classrooms. We will now open the floor for our Q&A session. May I invite Dr. Annie to moderate this session along with the 4 presenters. Over to you, Doctor.
Well, thanks everyone. I want to thank our 4 speakers for taking us into some very interesting parts of the wellbeing landscape. And we've looked at some of the psychosocial distress that is among our young people, and certainly this is evidenced worldwide, elevated distress among large cohorts of young people, particularly post-COVID. So it's really interesting to hear, particularly the data from Bhutan. And we've finished on a much more optimistic note. We learned about listening to young people's voices, and the transformation of knowledge through intercultural exchanges and the sort of deep learning that occurs for everyone. And we finished with compassion and compassionate classrooms. And I was very pleased to see in your research, Doctor, the centrality of compassionate listening, which speaks to my own belief that listening in a way that recognizes and leads to understanding, that kind of epistemic listening that Arberg, a Scandinavian researcher, calls virtuous listening, so that we are deeply present to others. So I would like to open the floor to questions. If you can just nominate who you would like to direct your question to. And also, if anyone just had some observations about the presentations we've had, because as I said in my presentation, we are all wellbeing experts. And so your points of view would be very welcome as well. So I'll hand over to you. Who would like to start us off? We've got questions everywhere. We have 3 questions at the front.
First of all, thank you all very much. Very insightful presentations. Dr. Annie, I was really interested in your comments around how much wellness washing we are seeing in organisations now, attempting to elevate their social responsibility agenda and attract talent. And I wasn't sure if you're aware of the fact that surprisingly, one of the paradigms that is leading reform in Australia in the psychosocial hazard space is the law. And we've recently had a High Court decision in Australia that has changed the law and really changed the duty around employers having to be proactive in managing psychosocial hazards in the workplace at Cosgrove in Victoria. And what we're seeing as a result of that is change in regulations across workforces everywhere, and employers can no longer ignore the duty to be proactive in providing a wellness environment. So it's not just yoga at lunchtime, it's actually access to services. And one of the features that was raised that I think might be very relevant to Bhutan is workload. Whether or not having an excessive workload over a very long period of time can contribute to the trauma that is being now identified. So there's some really leading work, hopefully from the law in Australia, to help with this, a light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you.
It's great to hear that law, and this speaks to the sort of multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary ways of understanding. And I hope that that decision does bring some real change, and that there is greater accountability in organisations. And access to services is always an issue as well. That are there sufficient services to support the demand? So I think it's complex.
Really interestingly, in that case, the employer raised the defence that there are these programs available for a counsellor to come in at lunchtime and help people who are distressed. And there was a series of workshops. But of course, the people are so overworked and their deadlines are so heavy that they could not take the time to attend the workshops or access the services that were being provided.
Yes.
And for the first time, the High Court of Australia said this isn't good enough. Yeah.
I don't think that message has got through to a lot of organisations yet about work.
I think it'll take a compensation award.
Yes.
And this was actually a female lawyer that sued the government of Australia, government of Victoria, and was successful. And the compensation award was quite high. So I think now that there is a financial impact and penalty, that more people will start to pay attention, particularly at the board level, where there can be personal responsibility for directors' duties.
Yes.
I've spoken too long. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to jump straight into the question. My question, in fact, to introduce myself, I'm King Atappa, And I have, in fact, two questions to two different presenters. First, to Dr. Jambe, Dr. Jambel Hamu. You concluded your presentation with the recommendation that the GNH values and principles should be integrated into the school curricula, which I think is a very fair recommendation. But I don't know whether you are aware that in 2010 onwards, we consciously infused the values and principles of gross national happiness into our school curricula. Of course, we don't have a separate curriculum, GNH curriculum for schools, but we are supposed to have, infused the gross national happiness values and principles into the school curricula in our school system. So maybe that might not be a question, but just like an observation from my side. And also, you'd be aware that we have something called green school, model or modality or system that we initiated in 2010 only. But this somehow could not take root in our schools. I don't know for what reason, whatever reason there may have been, but sadly, but this one is being, it has become quite popular in other nations like Japan and, Korea, etc. So quite pity that we have not been able to do this. This is also my observation. And to Dr. Kesang Sherap, I couldn't get it as to why you have done the study twice, 2016 and 2023. Was the intention for comparability or the comparative study? If that be the case, how confident are you? What percentage of confidence level do you have about the reliability, the credibility of the study itself in terms of the reliability and validity of the findings? Because the cohort would have been different, situations would have been different, the conditions would have been different, and there must have been a lot of changes having taken place between 2016 and 2023. If you can make some comment on that. Thank you so much.
Hello, thank you. Yes, it was mainly conducted after a gap of about 7 years to basically see if there has been any changes. And as you rightly pointed out, there must have been a lot of changes, but these situations actually did not change much. The mental health situations did not change in spite of other factors, having undergone some changes. So in terms of reliability, of course, we used all the valid and reliable tools that have been used elsewhere in the world in terms of measuring the mental health, substance use, bullying and discrimination, resilience, all this. And I'm quite confident that, of course, we made some modifications to suit our context in terms of making it more understandable to our youth. Thank you.
Oh, another question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, can we just allow Dr. Janay to respond to that question? Sorry, we'll come back to you.
Thank you, sir, for the question. Yeah, I did follow the documents when I did my PhD, and then what happened was, please pardon me if I'm wrong, I did go through all the documents, and then even the recommendations I have come to is by listening to the voices of the teachers of where I have carried out the in-depth interview. So what happened is there are
these things are mentioned there, but then they're not very consistent. I may be wrong, please pardon me. They are not very consistent. And then when I hear, I don't mean that they are not there. They are there, but explicitly they should come out very intentionally. And then what we can do is, then it becomes a very fixed kind of curriculum, which can sustain over a long period of time. Because some of the interviews, they just, because there was a variety of answers, some they said like, they have so many good practices in the school that contributed them becoming very compassionate. Whereas other schools, it did not happen. Like for example, I'll tell you one thing, like, I would say like having a monk in the school. They have a monk in the school, and then some few teachers said like, this monk is really helping us to become more compassionate from the Buddhist point of view. Then we can apply it in the class. When I was asking the same question to other teachers, they said they don't have that. So I was thinking it should be uniform. You know, it was helping some. And I wish if that could be uh, made consistent in other school, that other school would have been helped so much. So that is why I'm saying like, when you make it explicitly, you need to have an objective, you need to have the activity. And the most important is the assessment, just to see how teachers are progressing, how teachers are being benefited. So we should have that assessment, whereby we do at the end of the year or end of the semester. You see how much teachers are really contributing in terms of their practice and how much they are embodying that. Because right now I feel it's my understanding that it's very teachers we are practicing very unconsciously. We're taking it for granted that because it's so much inherited in our DNA that it is manifesting in the form of our behaviors. But compassion is something that is very, very serious. I'll tell you, like, it's not easy. It looks very easy, but then it takes care of the cognitive, whereby you have to have that awareness. It takes care of the affective, where you have to have the empathy. Then it talks about the action, motivational action. So that is why this is a very difficult concept that one can embody. So for that, it needs training. So that is why I just thought, like, if it can be put explicitly in the curriculum, there can be a very sustained way of taking it in the future. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you. And yes, please.
Thank you. Very short comment and one short question. This can be answered either by Dr. Scherer or Mr. Sering. The comment here is that hearing from the presentations of these two, I just would like to inform here that in terms of the well-being and the bullying, which has been decreased from 2016 to 23, from 16% to 10, one of the factors could be that there is a strong drive from the PAMA Secretariat, Renew, and the Health Council under my organizations. For instance, there are around 574 trained and certified registered counselors. For instance, today there are two staff who are discussing, who are trying to come up with strategies as to how they can enhance the well-being of the students at the Par College of Education, and from there they would go around. So having said this, are there any plans? There could be some research gap, factors leading to a very heartening to see from 16 to 10 dropping this kind of a problem, bullying, and is there any plan as to what factors leading to improving this well-being of the students, be it in the higher education or within the school? Thank you. So these questions either can be answered by Dr. Scherer or Sering. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In schools, we have counselors who looks after these things, but still then the practices that is going on in the school are not that intensive, comprehensive, because like one single counselor cannot reach cater to all the students, and students do not come out as well. Like bystanders are not coming up, and promoting like that bullying things are going on in school, and most of the time it goes unnoticed by the counselors. And because of that, like this trauma responsive educational practices, especially uh, dealing with the bullying and sexual harassment has to be like practiced intensively in the school. And the government should also assess whether trauma responsive educational practices are being practiced by the school teachers throughout the country. Did I answer the question?
Maybe quickly, I agree with you, sir, in terms of reduction in the bullying cases. By the way, bullying in the schools and the colleges is not just amongst the peers, it is from the teachers also sometimes. The data shows that. I'm sure, of course, it was beyond the scope of my research to find out the reasons why it has declined, but I'm pretty much sure that PEMA Secretariat's anti-bullying framework must have helped in our context. Yes.
As said by Dr. Shirab, my study also did not focus on why, what kind of bullying is going on, what are the frequencies of bullying happening in the school. As Dr. said, one of the like reason why bullying has drastically decreased may be due to the PEMA Secretariat, because PEMA Secretariat, people from the PEMA Secretary comes to our school frequently and talks about these things and are very much concerned about the bullying and sexual things, sexual harassment thing going on in the school. So I guess one of the reason could be the PEMA Secretariat's framework, as said by Dr. La.
Thank you, thank you. And
Hello. I have one short question.
oh, have we got time for one more question?
Yeah.
No, I'm getting the signal. What's that mean?
Yeah, it's a short one. My question is directly to Dr. Keza. How do you quantify like death by mental illness to come to a conclusion that it's a sixth killer, like empirically? How do you quantify and measure like death by mental illness? Because I saw that it's a sixth killer, mental illness as a disease.
The Ministry of Health has actually concluded that based on their data, this is not from my research, this is based on the data that is being maintained by the Ministry of Health, and then they have declared publicly that mental health is the sixth killer disease. I don't have from health here.
I wonder if
Yeah.
if we could have that conversation over lunch, if
Okay.
that be
Okay.
possible?
That should be fine. But just to give a very short answer to his question, I think he's basically talking. The figure are from the suicide. The death due to suicide was the sixth killer in the country.
Right, thank you. And look, I want to thank everyone, and I just have one last word, given we've been talking about bullying. I really, it's very important in this space to also think about the young person who is doing the bullying, because their life course actually, the research on how they travel in life is very poor. They have very poor outcomes. So in schools and colleges, we also need to be looking after the well-being of the young person who is actually initiating the bullying. So lots of complex problems, but student voice, compassionate classrooms will address some of these issues, whole school approaches. So lots of deep thinking needs to occur to address an issue such as bullying, which in Australia, our statistics around bullying are still very worryingly high. So it's certainly a shared problem, and perhaps an area for shared research. So thank you, everyone. I hope your well-being continues to elevate throughout the day. And thank you for your engagement.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Annie, and our presenters. This concludes our session on thematic area 4. It's been great to see so many questions coming up. Since we're limited on time, like Dr. Annie suggested, I would kindly request you to take it as conversations during the lunch. I'm sure the presenters will be more than happy to engage you. And before we break for lunch, just two quick announcements. A lady in the audience has lost her Rachu, so if anybody finds a Rachu lying around, please drop it at the coffee station outside and she will pick it up from there. And second, we have our research journals that was just launched yesterday opposite to the coffee station. It's free for distribution, so please take a copy each. There are some very interesting studies inside. Thus, we will now break for our lunch. Please return by 1:40 p.m. Thank you.